and welcome to our discussion of Eight and a Half. David Lejeune, how are you, my
Hey,
friend?
I fell asleep.
Hmm,
Okay, so here we are.
chastising. So, without further ado, Eight and a Half. We've I never realized that this came right after La Dolce Vita.
That I saw it in high school when it first came out, and I went to high school in Conroe, Texas, which is a small little town, especially back then. This would have been, I don't know, 64 or something like that. No, 65. Um, anyway, it was small town in Texas, one movie theater, and they showed middle of the road kind of stuff, just not pretty good stuff. And one day, by accident, they got shipped the reels of Eight and a Half by accident. And word kind of got to us, and so that night we went to see the one and only one-time showing of La Dolce Vita. And the next day in school, me and my friends loved it, and of course,
Was it
and
eight and a
we
half or
knew,
La Dolce
huh?
Vita? Was it eight and a half or La Dolce Vita?
Oh, I'm sorry, eight and a half.
Oh,
Eight and a half. And well, most of the people in school were like, what the hell was that? And we of course knew who Fellini was and loved it. And
this is the movie I've seen the most. It's like my comfort movie. If I'm depressed, I just put it on. I lost count at 21. When I was 19, I'd seen it 11 times with the sound on, 11 times with the sound off, and then I lost count. Since then, many times, and both just because it's a comfort movie for me. Even though it's funny, there's so much in the content that you can see a certain you know me, there's certain you can see the egotism and the problematic fact that that's like my blanky movie. Like, oh, I take comfort in this because Guido's he's like my dark self. He's like who I don't want to become. I mean, he's got it all made. He's this director, but he's just thinking back on the memories that make him who he was, and missing the kind of he's surrounded by the synthetic, and he's has this longing for, I think, spiritual truth. And unlike any Fellini character so far, he's one actually asking for grace. Others get it or they don't, like Iberia or La Strada, Gelsomina, but he really does. Like from that opening scene, which is amazing, he makes a beautiful Marcello Mastroianni look like a corpse when you got Flight of the Valkyries playing right after the dream sequence. He's in his pajamas, and he turns on the lights. He's got bags under his eyes, and he made Marcello Mastroianni look like 10 years older. And it was makeup and just acting. It's brilliant. But yeah. And to see it come out at the time in Conroe of all places is such a trip to think about.
Can I just?
Did the audience react in any way, like audibly?
He can't hear me.
no, not that I recall.
No.
Like I said, a lot of people were like, just like,
What
didn't
the
know
fuck
what
is
didn't know what to make of it.
Te l'avevo detto che l'avresti fatto il film. Avanti, avanti, salti!
It's a film that, for me, it was talked about for years. He talked about this with producers for so many years, but it before La Dolce Vita. So I don't think it would have been made with the success that it had would not have existed without La Dolce Vita as a predecessor. But behind me,
that's what put him on the map in terms of world fame. And then, of course, he could get backers once he had caused the sensation. What I was going to say is that to me, it's definitely what do you do when you're having a creative block? But it's also, I think, about it's a man who's not way imperfect, not
Way
really
imperfect.
bad man, but way imperfect, and causing a lot of problems for people around him.
Yes.
Trying to find out who he is.
Yes.
He's trying to figure out who he is, and I think he wants to make his life better, but doesn't quite know how, and he's kind of going through all these different, you know,
I guess the only one
and his life is
asking.
somewhat compartmentalized, and the compartmentalizing is kind of collapsing in on itself. So he can't
Yes.
escape any aspect of his life because it's all kind of just bleeding out over into each other, something like that.
I think you nailed it, and it's been much talked about as to whether or not this is Fellini himself, maybe autobiographically. The movie poster behind me, well, there's a few. There's In the Year of 13 Moons by Fassbender, but next to that, Bardo by Iñárritu. I consider the Mexican almost remake, but it's so deeply in conversation with 8.5, but through a very Mexican lens. Like my final projects, I'm doing two final projects as a special topics class. So like all these videos, and ultimately I'm making a video connecting Mexican cinema with Fellini because the overarching Catholicism, I mean, I grew up in a weirdly Fellini-esque reality where there was clowns on every corner, juggling flaming swords for a few pesos, or just doing, acrobatic acts in the time it took for the light to turn. And that was like my reality. So it just kind of.
I mean, speaking of Mexico, Jodorowsky,
Yes.
El Topo, when it first came out, and I saw it very early on, it was referred to as,
Fellini-esque.
a Fellini-esque type thing with, with a more spiritual layer injected into it, kind of cosmic spiritual layer aspect to it. Anyway,
we're going to talk about Toby Dammit too, because I want to ask you about Toby Dammit because you were there when it came out, and like this movie went on to, influence Johnny Rotten. Forgot. I mean, its impact is one of those movies that people who haven't seen it have been touched by it without even knowing.
I can tell you about
Asa Masa.
8.5 is like the introduction to film. I think you should watch it. I mean, definitely, like, when I was first getting into foreign films, first off, I went to high school with a very, very Italian girl. Like, she's like, I married her to her husband. She's like my surrogate sister, and she's just very Italian. So, like,
dude, that's.
Yeah, it gives you the great idea. And just earlier, like I said, like Marcello Mastroianni is like, to Fellini, like Gel Paul Belmondo was to Godard,
Yes.
just like a kind of conduit for the director to live through, and that's pivotal to see that. And the dream sequence, of course, is just so brilliant.
Like, wow, these women are both grotesque and yet lovable. We can see that Guido loves them, and I apparently in Italian she was almost unable to understand because the dialect was so thick. But as Guido and all the other kids are being put to bed, she's cursing her husband, saying, "Oh, the bastard! He was a good for nothing. He never did anything." But that's why I never remarried, because that good for nothing bastard. I know he wouldn't wait for me at St. Peter's Gate, so I just never. And so it's just like she really loved him, and it's just like a brushstroke. You never see her again. She's underlit, looks like a witch, but instead is like soft and tender and beautiful. So he's just he's subverting our expectations. But that Asa Nisi Masa, because we go from the scene of this guy, I actually looked into his name, the actor's name was Ian Dallas, who plays the magician, and he apparently he was a magician. And during the interview, Fellini had gone through tons of people. He's like, he needed someone that was able to look at the markers on the ground and know where to go while keeping his eyes on the chalkboard, where because he's, his whole thing is he can ask a question and then his blindfolded assistant will write the name on the board. And so he's going around horrifying some, others are just playing along with it. But then Guido comes up and says, "Does it really work?" And he goes, "Yes, yes, of course." And that's when she says, "I don't know what it means. Asa, nisi, masa." In his language, in a very Alfred Jarry childlike way, when he was a kid in school, that in their game, they would take out all but the vowels, which leaves anima. In Jungian terms, anima is the feminine spirit, and anima projections
Yeah.
are the feminine projection into our dreams. So some people say, "Oh, well, that's a coincidence." Sometimes I think it's Occam's razor. Like the simplest answer is often true, and I
Yeah.
think that's what Fellini was. It's what a lot of this film is about.
I gotta say this really quick though. I have the IMDb page of 8.5 up, and I gotta watch it again because I don't remember Barbara Steele being in it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Yeah.
I love her so much. Barbara Steele, what a bombshell.
Yeah, she was great in it.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I almost forgot.
I was telling Chris too that Anuke May, who plays
Yes, Anuke May.
plays the sort of critical, stoic wife, and that that to me she's one of the great beauties of film ever, and kind of very like the European Garbeau. Thinking about charming men, because ultimately Guido is incredibly charming.
Oh yeah. Oh god.
And the whole idea that maybe having that kind of personal charm is a moral test, because it
Yes.
can go really, really sideways.
There you go, man.
It
That's
can
good.
really be destructive, but at the same time, there's a way to use that personal charm to get a lot of really wonderful things done, and
Yeah.
to do a lot of wonderful things to people.